Best Irish music on irishradio.org with Jerry Byrne.
Irish Radio, I'm Jerry Byrne. Now, since the advent of the COVID and the lockdown and all the rest, I was speaking to many singers, artists, entertainers, and the great and the good of Irish entertainment. I've got a gentleman now who's been performing professionally for 40 years, right through until COVID struck. Gentleman who's played with many bands for many years, doing his own one-man show. Prolific songwriter, has written many songs and many hits for many people. I'm delighted to say hello from his home in Enniskillen to Eugene Cunningham. Eugene, how are you?
Hello, Jerry. How are you doing? Nice to chat to you.
Same as that, Eugene. Same as that. Listen, you've been around a long time.
I certainly have, as I could hear you saying in your intro. 40 years, I guess, now in the business from 1980, and that time sure went fast.
Indeed.
How between a couple of different bands, one-man show, and the social dance scene took up to 40 years.
Yes, that is something else. How did you start out, Eugene? Did you start out in a band?
Not really. Like everything else, music, you don't really start out playing for as if you're going to go to a band. Just out for fun and in local bars and little sessions, I suppose you could say. And it sort of grew into a little two-piece, and then eventually, I think around about 1980, I think. The first group I was in was John Farry. We had a wedding band at that stage, and kind of all started from there, and that was it. And once I kind of started on it, it was like a drug. It never stopped.
Right. Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent stuff. And you also played, who are the bands you played with? I know you were with Jimmy Buckley for a number of years. Yes,
Jimmy was the last band. I think I left Jimmy in 2006. So time goes fast. Yeah, and before that, John Hogan. Jimmy Buckley and John Hogan took about 20 years between them. And before that, it was about 6 years playing in London, different little groups, stepping, which was good fun. Playing with them, all different bands, doing little spots here and there. You could actually, at that time, you could play 12 gigs in London in a week, no problem, in the 80s. So it was a great time.
Indeed. That was incredible. It really was.
Oh, yes. It was a great time for music and great fun, great crowds everywhere. And then just by chance, our band broke up in 1988. We had a band called Eastbound and Down. That was the last one in London. And the drummer came back home and joined up with a young fellow who had started on the road at the time, John Hogan. And I remember coming home on holidays and went up to see them in Bundoran. And I was intending to go back to London because that's where I was playing at the time, but something happened anyway that weekend, and they were looking for a guitar player to fill in. And Johnny knew I was over here in Ireland, and at that time there was no mobile phones. You couldn't just ring somebody, find them. You had to take a series of phone calls to see where somebody was. And he phoned Elaine, who at the time was my partner in London. He phoned her, and she phoned her, and after a series of phone calls he got me, and I phoned the manager in Tullamore. And to make a long story short, filled in for the weekend, and I think 13 years later I was still there. So,
wow, that was cracking stuff. That was back. Yeah. You were the John Hogan back in, just kind of after he started, and I mean it was a super band, and it was a huge show back then.
Yeah, there were great days, I have to say. I think I was around about 27, and it was all a kind of a new thing. That he was getting fantastic crowds. Every night was something different. At the time, you were counting crowds by how many couldn't get into a gig, rather than how many was at a gig. And he had a fantastic career at that stage. There's no question about it. And it was good fun, and it was a good band. And all I can say is it was a very enjoyable period.
Yes, I'd well believe it. I'd well believe it. And I mean, you toured all over the place with, with John, because he travelled the length and breadth of Ireland as you did, and also England as well, and Scotland.
Oh, of course, for goodness sake. Well, I suppose playing on a stage is a little bit, or being in a band, I would compare it to being like an iceberg. People look up and they see this couple of hours on stage, and they don't see really what goes on behind the scenes, or the amount of hours travelling and all the rest of it. You know, when people see that couple of hours, you have it very handy. But you forget all about the amount of time to get to a gig, the sound check and the hanging around, coming back from it. So it is. It's not. It's a nice job, but not necessarily an easy job.
Yes.
You know, you have to really love the music to stick with it. You know, and but at that time, when crowds were good and there was a lot of fun, so it was an easy gig to do at that particular time.
Indeed.
No question about it.
And certainly, as you say, it's certainly something that you certainly would have to love to do it, because it is, it is tough going. It's a lot of miles, it's a lot of travelling, as you say. The sound check and the rigging up and all the rest of it, and and then afterwards it's sort of all got to be undone again with gear down.
That's correct, yeah.
Packed and changed.
That's the side of it people don't see, and that eventually is, of course, what you ask yourself. The average gig, I suppose, at the time would have been taking about 12 hours, and then the longer gigs, maybe 15, 16 hours from leaving home until you're back again. So that is a long day, and but I always said, when I was enjoying it, I would do it, and when it got to the stage where I just wasn't enjoying this anymore, I said I would stop doing it, because there's one thing for certain: life is too short to dread doing something. You know what I mean? So I think I just ran to the stage where I said, okay, I've had enough of this. So I thought, wouldn't it be just handy? Wouldn't it be lovely just to have your own little thing, maybe more local? So around 2006, I decided to give it a lash and just go on my own, really, and it worked out grand.
That's excellent.
The bars and hotels, they were still doing great at that time, around about 2006. And when you put in a reasonably good show, you get back, and there was plenty of work to be got that time as well, even on the one man show. So it kept everything going, really. You know what I mean? There was continuity from the bands into the one man show, and then happened to meet up with a guy, Brendan McGee, and we done the social dances together. So I had a nice little combination of social dancing, hotels, bars, lounges, and all that sort of thing. So it was never boring, because it was a good variety.
Yes.
Of work. When you manage to improvise the different things.
Indeed. So now tell me this: you've written an incredible amount of songs. I mean, not alone just the ones you wrote yourself, but I mean you've written you've written songs. Big Thomas recorded, Sean Brennan, also as you mentioned there, Brendan McGee, Ali Harron, Marion Curry, Thomas Milligan, so many, Jimmy Buckley as well.
It's amazing how they build up through the years. Not that I never intentionally set out to do that. It's just you write one song, and I didn't really. The first song that I ever wrote and that was recorded was I was still with Jimmy Buckley, and that was the Monterey Angel, and I certainly didn't plan a series of them, but just you get other ideas, and I think as time goes on, like any craft, you become more and more accustomed to it, and it becomes a little bit easier, and then you get more ideas, and because I could sort of take it from the initial idea, do the little backing track, present the demo, so I could do sort of everything myself. So I suppose that made it a little bit easier. I didn't need the interjection of anybody else to make a demo. So it's amazing how through the years the number of songs do build up, and when you look back, you actually would forget them.
Yes, it's
but yes, there has been a good number of songs. Yeah, I'm not saying there were any classics among it, but however, at the time you enjoy writing them, and that's it, and it's the fun of doing it really more than anything else.
Indeed, yeah, but I mean, you've had some, classic songs. I mean, like Sean Brennan's "Lanesborough Lady," hugely successful. Also,
yeah, well, strange enough, that song would have been kind of written to, written to form for him, I guess, because he asked me to write a song, and I had done a launch from one night, and he asked me would I write a song from, and I didn't even know the fella. I said, "Where are you from?" And he said, "I'm from Lanesborough." So and that was it. And Lanesborough, just Lanesborough Lady, and from those couple of words, kind of just wrote a song around that.
Right.
And it turned out okay. And he ended up doing, I think, 4 or 5 songs that are on that particular CD.
Indeed, yeah. Another one which was incredibly popular was Katie from Sweet Kate Jew.
Yeah. Again, he was looking for another one, and I tried to stick in the Roscommon theme for him, and thankfully he wasn't looking for another one, because I was beginning to run out of ideas from Roscommon. I'd have had to branch out into other counties. But yeah, Katie was an interesting enough song as well. Yeah, and it wasn't all written in one. You maybe write a little bit now, write a little bit again, and then kind of pare it down until eventually you have it down to 3 minutes, and that's it. You know, so
superb stuff.
He always done fairly good recordings of the songs, and he got good arrangements of them. So that, you know, the writing might have been that great, but the finished product came across.
Well,
okay, you know?
Yeah, well, it's impossible kind of to get the finished product, when if you're not going in with a good song in the first place. To be fair, Eugene, so you've done well.
Well,
now, Big Tom actually did a couple of years. One of them was a song. There's a Time. It was about a lady who had a difficult life.
That's right. Yeah, that I remember. That would be about 11, and it's hard to believe where the time goes. I think it's around about 11 years. He recorded that. I played it for Henry McMahon, and it was actually intended for somebody else. And Henry said, "Would you not give it to Big Tom?" And I said, "Well, if you think so, you know what I mean. If you think you'd be interested in it, why not?" So he went ahead with it that time, and he put his own style on it. Like, of course, he does with everything. And it wasn't as I had perceived it in my head when I was writing it, but it turned out well. And it was a difficult enough story behind that song, but if you did look into the words, but Tom done a good job on it, as I said, and that's 11 years ago now. So
indeed, and another interesting one, Eugene, you wrote as well, which was a sort of a recitation more, which was The Ghost of Glengevlin.
Yeah, that was a very interesting story behind that one, because that was it came from a true story, or a story that our mother told me about coming home, and around about 1 o'clock in the morning, a place called Glengevlin, which is a little place in County Cavan. I don't know whether you'd be aware of it now or not.
I am very well, yes.
And she was, I think herself and her sister, I think, and a couple of cousins, but they were coming home from, as it used to be at that time, Caelian, at about 1 o'clock in the morning, and they came to a crossroads, and this funeral cortege was walking up the road with a horse pulling the coffin, and people walking behind the footsteps on the gravelly road. And they said they had to stop and wait until this passed by. And as I said, at that time in the morning, you see, so they went home, of course, and told this story, and they were told not to be raving, you know what I mean, at 1 o'clock in the morning, what or who or where. And and there wasn't even anyone in the area dead at the time, so I was thinking about that story, and of course, I just thinking about 1 o'clock in the morning, and then I thought, in what time would that be in America? So I think it's 5 hours difference, so I think it was 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening in America. So from that, kind of built that story around that perhaps the funeral was really taking place in America, but the image of it, or the spirit, was in Glengavan. So I had told Henry McMahon this story when Henry was with us coming back from a gig one night, and of course Henry liked this story, and he got writing as well with this, and Henry wrote this story or song around that. But when he came back to me with it, it was 5.5 minutes long, and I said, Henry, it's too long, who's going to listen to a song that length, or whatever, So he it was forgotten about for a while, and the next thing is he came back, and as Henry, in his inimitable style, he said, I have revisited that song, he said, and we've done it as a monologue. So it turned out very interesting. There's no question about it.
Indeed, so.
And it's amazing the number of people who ask about that and talk about it. And now in the era of Facebook and all the rest of it, I've had a load of messages from people from America asking me who was the man from Glan. You see, and I have to say the man from Glan is only a figment of the imagination. You know what I mean? And some of them will get a bit cross with you, saying no, I know who he is.
Right.
And it is funny, and but that's the story of the ghost of Glengavan. So
amazing stuff, it really is. And listen, another one in a different style you did, which was very, very successful, was and it became a huge sort of dance song, which was for Stephen Smith, the country boy and the Ceilidh girl.
Yes. Well, that song was recorded by, I think, 4 or 5 or maybe 6 different artists, and Stephen done a particularly good job on that. Yeah. Well, again, it was the idea of an American meeting an Irish girl, and it just came from that thought of trying to turn it around the other way, instead of the usual American side, taking the American over to Ireland and building a story around it from our perspective, really. That's what that came about. And of course, with it, there was plenty of potential for playing Irish style, which Stephen Smith certainly put a lot of effort into recording that song, and he done a great job on it.
He did.
He put sort of an Irish twist on it, as well as a country thing. You know what I mean? So he done a great cover on it. There's no question about it. But he's a fantastic artist, and he can play everything. And
yes.
He's just he can turn his hand to anything, and somebody like that can bring a song alive, and he certainly did.
He certainly did, definitely. I mean, there's just so many others you've done. Now, the interesting thing is you've written a song and have released it called "Dancing Shoes," all about the current situation.
Yeah. Well, since my last gig was on St. Patrick's Day, actually, and in Lisnaskey, and I remember putting the gear in the car that night, and we were saying this could be a couple of months. Not thinking that things would turn out the way they were, but because I couldn't play anymore, I wasn't playing anymore. You're more inclined to more time. I knew if nothing else to think about things and to write. So every couple of weeks, I was writing a little song, doing a little video, and putting them on Facebook just as a hobby, really, And Dancing Shoes was the last one I done last week, just. Because we're thinking about the dancers, and you get messages from them and asking, how you're doing, and maybe texting them. Because, some of these, especially in the social dance scene, maybe more than the bigger dance arena, you'll have smaller crowds, maybe 70, 80, 90, 100 people, and you get to know them more so than in the bigger bands.
Yes.
So the text tend to be asking, how are you keeping and how are you doing without the music, and vice versa. So I was thinking about them all, and when you do those social dances, I was always amazed that people would come in carrying their shoes, and they'd sit down and they'd chat for a wee while, and the next thing is you could see that the shoes being changed for the dancing shoes, and I had a vision of that in my head, and coming in putting on their dancing shoes for the dance, and really that's just song was built around that. And then of course the many thousands of musicians, of course, who would have been playing for not only the social dance scene but the bigger bands and all the rest of it, and what are they all doing now, and how life has changed so drastically for them, and as well as the dancers, so
indeed. So indeed,
wrote that song around about that, and people seem to like it, and it's a hobby to me now. It's an interest. It's just, at my age, it keeps me from rusting, I suppose. You know what I mean? If nothing else, and it gives me an incentive to pick up the guitar and play a wee bit, and because I'm doing everything from the initial idea to molding it into a song, to making the backing track, and then doing the video. So I can sort of go from A to Z on my own. So it's a hobby, and it's an interest, and it doesn't take the place of doing a live gig, but it just keeps an interest going and keeps your mind active, and keeps an interest in the music.
Indeed.
And maybe next week I think of something else, but I don't purposely say I must do a song this week or whatever. Just if you get an idea, I will, and that's exactly what that was.
Fantastic stuff. It's absolutely, it fascinates me actually, people who write songs, where the inspiration comes from, sort of, and all of that, because I think it's absolutely an incredible talent to have. And
well, I don't know that I wouldn't be. I'm by no means a fantastic writer or anything else. I remember I was over with the time that you lived in Welland Garden City. I have a brother in Welland Garden City, and he used to listen to your show, and I was over one time, and he says Jerry Byrne was on, and he was talking about you as a prolific songwriter, and I said, well, that man, he's a very generous man with his anecdotes, because I certainly wouldn't say that. But I think you were very kind there, Jerry.
No, I don't. No, it's no. But honestly, I mean, like, to when we listed out all those various songs, I mean, it takes something to be able to write a song like that. And obviously, all of those singers and artists who've recorded those songs have obviously seen the talent and seen the quality of the song in order to record it.
Yeah, well, that is the strange thing about singers and singers on songs, because sometimes you might do a little demo of a song and you might play it for a singer and they might say yes, they like it or whatever, but you don't hear anything more about it until the song is polished up and done by somebody else, and they say that's a fantastic song. So the knack is for somebody to maybe see the potential in a song in its rough state that I would present it to them, you see. And some singers have an ability to see the potential in something in its rough state, whereas maybe some other singers, it has to be polished up for them slightly more to see that maybe they could have potential. But not everything I would write, or not everything anyone, not everything works. And I think as well, if you wrote for somebody, which is another way of looking at it, if you knew a singer, knew an artist, knew their style, you could actually write for them or write towards that, and that works equally as well, and probably easier to some degree. But it's once you get the initial idea, and a song can sort of write itself,
Right.
in a sense.
Right.
And the melody sort of, to me, maybe the easiest part of it, but it's getting a catchy chorus. I always try and have a little story as well in songs. There are songs that really haven't got a story, but I try and have a story. So then the story has to have a beginning and an end, and a middle or whatever, and it all has to fit into approximately 3 minutes. And sometimes that can be annoying to try and get it to fit or whatever, or the song's too low, depending if it's a fast song or a slow song, foxtrot or waltz or whatever. But it's a hobby, and it's an interest I have. Some people like gardening, some people like fishing, whatever, you know what I mean. I just enjoy writing the songs and building them up that way, and it's a hobby for me now, and it probably will remain a hobby. I'd say most of my days on the road are in the rear view mirror now at this stage, and but if that's the case, I certainly can't complain. I've had 40 very good years. I've been very lucky, and there's a lot of potholes on that musical career, and as a chap said to me in Lisbon, I just went down this year just to see them, to say hello and spend a couple of days in, because I normally do the full month in Lisbon every September, which is a great gig to have. But obviously this year not. But I went down anyway for Tina and myself went down for 4 days, and I was talking to a musician down there, and he said to say you spent 40 years and made everything you have from just playing music and lasted for 40 years without a break, he said, is it's not bad going. And I said, well, maybe I was lucky, maybe I managed just to make the right move at the right time, but those 40 years just flew in, and I have to say I enjoyed every single one of them. And all in the different styles, whether it was in the bands, whether it was the time in London, or the time on my own, or with the two-piece or whatever. Every aspect of it I enjoyed, and I think the day that you will get up on a stage and say, I don't want to be here, well, that's the day to pack it in, because it comes across that way, you know what I mean? You have to enjoy what you do, and especially with the music, because it's very hard. You can't really, people can see it if you're up there just for the knocking the time in, or whatever, you know, and that's it. And I was lucky, I enjoyed it all.
Indeed, well done on it all. And I think as well as the luck, you got to have a little bit of talent, and obviously, Eugene, you have that. Listen, it's been lovely to chat to you, lovely to catch up. Great to hear the background stories of some of those songs which have been just incredibly successful. Very interesting, I must say, to hear about your life. And listen, fingers crossed we'll be out of this situation when it's safe to do so. I'll hopefully see you on stage somewhere, out and about and around.
Well, Jerry, it's always fantastic to see you and to talk to you. And as I said, when and hopefully when all this ends, even if I do one gig a week, a gig now and again, I'd be very happy. You know what I mean? Just to have something to look forward to doing, or another gig coming up, whatever time is left, and I'll be very happy with that. Thank you very much for the call, Jerry, and thanks for the chat and for taking the time to talk.